First one, very simple, straight up. Damian Lillard, is he worthy of MVP consideration?
Okay, so this question I thought was pretty straightforward until our producer Max started poking holes into it about half an hour before this. And so he's saying, well, what is consideration? You know, because I think all of us are going to agree James Harden right now, barring something, you know, he gets hurt or something. Or
he's a lock to get this MVP
Pretty
award.
much. And so what is consideration? To me, consideration is getting top 5 votes, because that's how many sports writers, the media can vote for. They can vote for 5. And so to me, that is consideration. And Damian Lillard, to me, absolutely fits that barometer. I think right now he would get not many, but some top 5 votes. And if the Blazers continue to win and they continue to garner more attention nationally, I think he can continue to climb up that list. I mean, outside of James Harden, Damian Lillard has been as impactful on the Blazers' success as any player on any team elsewhere in the league. You can make that argument. And so if he's in that class of players, he's absolutely worthy of MVP consideration. And I would definitely put him in top 5, and I would seriously consider him as a top 3 candidate right now. But once again, the Blazers have to continue to win at the rate they're winning right now, or this conversation. If they lose the next 3, we're not having this conversation next week.
Okay, no.
Okay.
All right, and listen, this is no knock on Damian Lillard, because if you ask me the same question about LeBron James or Giannis Antetokounmpo or Anthony Davis, I'd give you the same answer. I think that unless you are actually in consideration to win MVP, then you're not in consideration. And none of these players are in consideration. I think that, in my mind, there's only 3 players who you could consider for that MVP race. And it's Harden, and it's Curry, and it's Durant. Those are the only 3. And the reason I feel that way, and the thing that Max and I were talking about, and that we were talking about before this, is every person feels differently about what the MVP should be. Some people think it's just the best player no matter what. But for me, I think that you have to weigh team success with individual stats. If you're a good player on a really great team, but your stats don't measure up, I don't think you're an MVP candidate. But with Harden and Durant and Curry, they have some of the best statistical lines in the NBA, and no one can match their team's level of success. So in my mind, when I heard people start to talk about Damian Lillard, you know, wading into the MVP conversation, I was surprised by it, because I don't think he's an MVP candidate. I think that he is nearing superstar status. I think that you could even start to talk about him as a top 10 player in the NBA right now. But an MVP is a whole other level, and I just don't think he's there, especially since we don't even know if the Blazers, to get to 50 wins this season, they'd have to go on a heck of a tear the rest of the season. And I don't think you can even think of someone as an MVP candidate if you're not leading your team to 50 wins.
Oh, the guy last year, the guy who won MVP last year didn't get to 50 wins. I don't think he should have won MVP last year.
He averaged a triple-double.
He did.
He did. But
like, that squashes for me.
It didn't for me. I think that it has to be more than just individual stats. And I think that, so no, I don't, if you were talking about, is Damian Lillard going to be an All-NBA, recipient this year? Is he going to be on one of the All-NBA teams? I think that's a great conversation to have. But until he's consistently leading the Blazers to 50, 60 wins per season, he's not an MVP candidate. He's really good. He's probably right there on superstar level status, but he's not an MVP.
I love that you took that side of the argument. Yeah. I kind of hopped back and forth on the fence, off the fence, and I took kind of the semantics approach that you did, where consideration, okay, can I make the case that this guy deserves to be mentioned in that category? I thought, well, yeah, he does. He's done enough, and it was one thing that came to mind when I really started to think about this, because a couple of weeks ago, this was absurd.
Yeah,
I was like, this is the most ridiculous conversation. This is such a homer approach to Damian Lillard, and I thought it was ridiculous. I was like, let's take this one step at a time. Let's get him into the All-Star game.
Yeah.
before we skip all the way to MVP. But I thought about it, and it was Brian Freeman at the Blazers Edge that we've talked about this tweet where he kind of compared Derrick Rose's stats during his MVP season. And I mean, guys, they're stupid close. I mean, they are almost identical. I mean, and you can even Lillard's been even a little more efficient than Derrick Rose was his MVP season. But on the flip side, you look at the team success that you were mentioning, and he got his Chicago Bulls into the 1 spot.
62 wins that year.
Yeah, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's going to take for Damian Lillard to truly be an MVP candidate. I think that you can consider it. We can talk about it. I think that he's taking that next step, and I think that these conversations have to be had in order for him to continue to get that love. I think the Pacific Northwest plays into it, the location of where the Portland Trail Blazers are, the national attention or lack thereof that the Blazers get. He's got to win these games that are on TNT. He's got to play well when the Warriors or Rockets are involved, or even tonight's game against the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Like all of these things play into it for him. And even for the All-Star snubs that he got. I mean, what was the one thing that kind of got everyone off the hook with on this? The Blazers aren't winning games.
Yeah.
And so you're going to say the same thing for this Blazers team. They have to go on a tear. Yeah. And what if they do? What if they do get into that 50 mark?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what if they end up as the 3 seed in the West? That's a real possibility.
Then let's talk about it then.
Right.
Okay.
But at this point, I think that it's still possible to make the argument that he deserves to be in the conversation. I'm like you, though. James Harden has this thing locked up. It's purely a formality at this point. I think even if Harden were to miss the rest of the season, I think he would still get the nod.
So what I'm hearing from Jared is you have to have another top 5, top 10 player on your team, basically, in order to be considered for MVP, for the most part. Because that's what it's going to take to win 60 games in today's NBA. Kevin Durant has Stephen Curry also on his team. He has Klay Thompson and Draymond Green also on his team. So you're penalizing Damian Lillard for not having Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green on his team. That's what you're doing right now. I mean, Kevin Durant is a better player than Damian Lillard, but is Kevin Durant as important to the Warriors' success as Damian Lillard is to the Blazers? No, he's not. The Warriors would still win lots of games and probably have a pretty similar record this year if they didn't have Kevin Durant. To me, MVP is also the impact you have on your team.
Yeah.
And Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, they're both great players. They're both better players than Damian Lillard, but they play on the same team. So who really is the most valuable player on that team? I think it's really hard to even pick. I think if you had that discussion throughout the league, it would be pretty split between Durant and Curry. And with the Rockets, I mean, James Harden, he was in the discussion last year, but as Orlando says, not really, because Russell Westbrook had a triple-double. He gets Chris Paul on his team this year. He's scoring a little bit more. His assists are down, but the Rockets are winning a few extra games more. And because Chris Paul's on his team, James Harden deserves to be MVP now. That seems to be flawed logic to me. In terms of guys who have had an impact on their team this year, James Harden has been spectacular, and I think has been probably the best player in the league this year, which is why I would vote for him.
And he's been flirting with this.
Yes,
this is something where he's taken those steps.
He has been, but after James Harden, I mean, you can make the argument for Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, but I'll throw back at you. They play on the same team. Right. It's hard to decide who's more valuable. And after that, LeBron, the Cavaliers have struggled all year. Anthony Davis, he's in the same conversation as Lillard, where he's elevating his team to a new level. Giannis, same type of thing. So beyond James Harden, when you're considering MVPs, I think Damian Lillard is right there after him.
Man, if it were up to me, though, most seasons I'd be voting for LeBron James if I had a vote.
Oh,
he hasn't won the award in 5 years.
You know me, I'm the same way. But the Cavs are only one game better than the Blazers right now at this point.
I think where I'm coming from is I think the MVP conversation should not be a conversation about 10 or 12 players like it is. I think it should be a conversation about 2 or 3 players. Because every year, there aren't that many players who are really worthy of being the most valuable player in the entire league. And I mean, you're talking about the Warriors and the Rockets, and yes, they have more talent on their rosters than the Blazers do. But if you put Damian Lillard on the Rockets, are they just as successful?
If you switch Damian Lillard and Chris Paul?
No, and James Harden.
Okay.
Because I don't think Chris Paul is an MVP candidate.
I would agree with you on that. That's why I would put James Harden. That's why I say he's in his. I would agree with you on that. If you switch James Harden, Damian Lillard, the Rockets probably wouldn't have as much success.
Now, if you put Lillard in place of Curry on the Warriors, I think they'd still be really good. So the Warriors are a different beast, and we know that.
Yeah.
You can't, the Warriors just blow up every conversation you want to have about anything. But I do think the MVP should not be such a large conversation that a player like Anthony Davis, who's putting up great stats on a good team but not a great team, or Damian Lillard, is an MVP candidate, because they're not really. They're not going to win MVP, so they're not a candidate.
Well, I think they're elevating their teams, though, to levels that they haven't been. You know, the Pelicans haven't been to, they've been to the playoffs once since Anthony Davis has been there, and they were an 8th seed that year. The Blazers have been a 500 team for the better part of 2.5 seasons, but because of the tear Dame's been on since he's returned from injury, they're now 9 games above 500, which they weren't since any time LaMarcus Aldridge left town.
And the past 2 seasons, when they've made their run to get into the playoffs, it's been Lillard's play. He's taken it to another level. That's another thing. Why doesn't he play at that level all season long? If he's an MVP candidate, he's doing what we've seen from him the last month or 2. He should be doing that the entire season, not just when it's time to turn it on.
That's fair. Max, was there something?
I was just going to add, I think you guys all made really good points. I think a problem is there's so many people have different definitions of the award. And I want to ask you guys, like, what would you think? Do you think it would be better if this award were Player of the Year? Do you think that would make things easier?
I think you'd probably get the same arguments. I mean, again, people would take that their own way. You know?
The word valuable is just so
vague.
You can you can take it with so many meanings.
Yeah.
And as a general approach, you normally see, as an automatic, legitimate candidate, best player, best team.
Yeah.
Right? That's usually where we start.
And right now, that's the way it would be because the Rockets have the best record in the league.
Yeah.
But last year, Westbrook won the triple-double, but they were the 6th seed.
Exactly.
47 wins.
Yeah. I just think what the type of season that Westbrook had was unheard of, and I think a lot of people thought that it was something that couldn't happen.
Yeah.
Statistically, what he did, he just dominated games on his own, on an average to above average team.
But I still think when I look at Westbrook's season last year, if he was that historic and dominant and dynamic, why were they just a 6th seed? Why didn't he lead them to 55 wins or
4
something?
other players.
It's not like they didn't have talent on the roster.
That's
he had
fair.
Victor Oladipo, who has proven himself to be a great player once he got out from under Westbrook's shadow.
Granted, he said he
had
needed that
Steven
experience
Adams.
in Oklahoma City to become the player he is now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Different situation. You know, your environment changes, how you play, who you are, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But dang, good conversation on this one.
Jared, you got me a little heated there, man.
I really
I
like
love
that
it.
because it's a fun conversation that's going on now on social media, especially here in Rip City about the MVP talks. And I just think that Damian Lillard is starting to make that push, and I think that it's something that is necessary for this area of the country who doesn't get a chance to watch the Blazers on a regular basis.
And like you said, he needs to play big in games that are nationally televised, like tonight against the Timberwolves. He needs to have a big game tonight.
If they lost to the Suns, are you guys even discussing this?
No, but
it's the way that they beat the Suns too.
No,
yes, that's a good point.
But no, I think that favors the Damian Lillard argument
because they don't beat the Suns without him.
Without his heroics at the end of the game. I think that helps say he should be the MVP because I think that shows without Damian Lillard, heck, the Blazers might be just as bad as the Suns.
You just said he should be the MVP. You don't actually think
he
should be the MVP.
In consideration.
But is he actually in consideration?
Nationally, no. But if they continue to win, which is the key to all of this, because if they lose, he'll fall off.
Right.
But if they make it, if they end up being the 3 seed at the end of the year, I think he will be in those top 5 votes.
I think that this conversation is more realistic than crazy now.
Yeah.
How about we go that far?
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing for this conversation to be happening for the Blazers and the franchise and Damian Lillard and all that.
I love how straight up these questions are.